I want off that inked in blood record.
Death metal, a genre that always turns heads. Many people look on it with confusion and disgust because of the gory album art and intense music. But you decided to give it a shot by watching this video. Hi, I'm Crimgo, and this is how to get into death metal. Now, this genre is not for everyone, but even people who think they wouldn't like it can end up liking it. People tend to be put off by the aggressiveness of the instruments, crude lyrics, and mainly vocal style. But that style is also why people are attracted to it. Death metal history is basically in line with metal history, so I'll keep this somewhat brief. In 1970, emerging English rock band Black Sabbath invented a new genre known as metal. The basis of Black Sabbath, Geezer Butler was inspired to write a song based off of a figure he saw at the foot of his bed one night. They created this unique sound of darkness and horror. Coming from the 60s where many rock songs were about love, this was a new interesting sound that put many people off, but many people were interested.
Gathered in their masses.
Black Sabbath that same year released their second album called Paranoid. This album took the darkness of the first and sped it up. This is truly when metal was born. Many bands took this style and helped metal expand, bands such as Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. Many new bands were coming out slowly, making the sound faster and faster, creating speed metal. Two bands in particular wanted to take the new speed but implement even more darkness elements. They wanted to create an evil sound. These bands were Bathory and Venom. Black metal was created. Black metal tended to have lyrics based off of Satanism. Satanism, there you go, and dark imagery. They also would play more aggressively and use poor sound quality. Around this time as well, a thrash band started becoming popular. A small band kind of known as Metallica.
Fuck you! You want to do some screaming, right?
Thrash took speed metal and made it even more faster and simultaneously killing speed metal. A band known as Possessed decided to take the darker route of black metal but with the speed of thrash and made it more blunt. The lead vocalist Barry Frisk also pioneered the vocal style of growling the lyrics instead of stinging. Although many people argue who truly invented death metal, Possessed definitely helped push that sound out. They're still thrash in my opinion. The true creators of death metal, or the band Death. Not everyone can just jump straight into death metal. When I first got into metal, I tried listening to Cannibal Corpse for the first time and I got put off by the vocals. But the more I grew and listened to heavier and heavier music, I began to tolerate the vocals, into appreciating them, into loving them. Starting with bands. I highly recommend starting with bands with vocalists that have a heavier sound but still understandable. Bands like Slipknot and Pantera are great examples. I would recommend Slipknot's Iowa and Pantera's vulgar display of power. Another band that has a heavier sound without being death metal would be Slayer. Fucking Slayer! Slayer is one of the big four thrash bands, alongside Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax. Slayer is known for their more blunt sound and imagery. They also have satanic imagery and lyrics. Classic death metal is a great place to start. They have all the characteristics of death metal, but at its most tame. A lot of these bands were the first in the death metal scene, setting the standards, so it makes sense that they are the bare minimum. Not saying that these bands are bad, I love these bands. While a thrash band named Possessed helped create the sound, even having a song titled death metal, Death was truly the first to push out the sound out fully. Their first two albums, Scream Bloody Gore and Leprosy, are two fantastic albums that show their distinct sound. If you want to hear a bit more evolved sound, I would recommend their fourth studio album, Human. Some other classic death metal bands include Obituary, Morbid Angel, Deicide, and Entombed. The weakest of these, in my opinion, would probably be Obituary, but they still have many fun songs to check out. Entombed also has a very different sound, mainly because they come from the European side of death metal, while these other bands are all from the States, mainly Florida. Look it up, they're like all from Tampa. It's kind of crazy. As death metal became more known in the scene, many bands saw how they could expand on the concept, whether that be just making the sound more aggressive or even adding elements like topical lyrics. The most popular death metal band is Cannibal Corpse, and they are a great band. Their albums like Tomb of the Mutilated and Torture are great albums. They also have great songs like Hammered Smashed Face, Addicted to Skin, I don't know if YouTube will let me say that, so I'm going to censor it, and Scourged Iron. Cannibal Corpse definitely went into the blood and gore factor of the band. I mean, you can see that by looking at their album covers. Many people describe them like a slasher movie, fun because of how overtop the violence is. Other bands in this vein of death metal I would recommend are Necrot, Skinless, and Dying Fetus. One band that I really like is completely different lyrical wise. Gojira tends to make their lyrics more about global problems like global warming. They also have a concept album about addressing environmental issues and the rebirth of a dead planet through a space-traveling storyline, with the underlying theme of a transition from a war to peace. Gojira is a great band to check out too for one of your first dives into death metal because their vocals are a lot easier to understand. Really quick, I just want to play you a couple seconds of a few songs that I really like that I think you should check out. Metal is definitely one of those genres that has the most experimenting within it. As a reaction from that, many bands have combined different genres with metal to create subgenres. Many bands combine different metal genres together, like progressive metal and death, creating progressive death. But they also combine many genres outside of metal, like groove metal with rap and hip-hop to make new metal. Subgenres can also be created by just experimenting and involving the sound, like how speed metal grew into thrash metal. One thing you'll hear a lot in the name of subgenres is core. Where does it come from? Core usually mean it has an influence from hardcore punk, with either musical aspects or topics, mainly political. One of the earliest death metal subgenres is grindcore, a mixture of death metal and hardcore punk. This is usually one of the hardest death metal genres to get into because of its poor sound quality and scratchy vocals. Another aspect of grindcore is their buzz-like sound with their guitars, making a guitar more sound like a chainsaw. Many grindcore bands tend to be more punk than death metal, so that you could argue that it's not really metal, But some bands wanted to truly be death metal with influence from hardcore, so they classified themselves as death grind. There are some other subgenres in this area, like gore grind and porno grind, where they take grindcore and make their lyrics more about gore or porn. There are some musical aspects added to these, but I haven't explored these sounds enough yet. Some bands I would highly recommend are Repulsion, Nails, Napalm Death, and Insect Warfare. Deathcore is also connected to hardcore. Combining heavy metal and hardcore created metalcore, and combining metalcore with death created deathcore. I would go into more depths about this, but I don't really want to talk about metalcore right now. One aspect of deathcore that is different from death is the vocals. Deathcore vocals do use that low growling sound, but there's also very high-pitched screams like black metal and raspy lower tones. Instruments tend to be tuned down a lot as well to give a heavier sound. Breakdowns are also a very prominent feature of this genre. Breakdowns are usually when the song slows down and then it jumps back into the song. It's kind of like a metal beat drop. Some bands I recommend are Lorna Shore, Chelsea Grin's, Distant, and Whitechapel.
Uh-oh, Robit Earl interjection. Deathcore is my favorite metal genre at the moment, and if you need rambunctious recommendations, I recommend Scumfuck and their album Ruthless Aggression.
Progressive death metal bands is very simple. It's death metal, but they added experimental components to the style. Like many progressive bands, they usually like to change up the time signature. They also may use unconventional instruments like pianos or even in some cases saxophones. Some bands like also adding clean vocals into their songs. One band in particular I like is Opeth. Their song The More starts off soft and angelic, and then turns into a more fast-paced metal, and then into aggressive death metal. Okay, now I could go on about all the different subgenres, but there are so many that this video would be like 6 hours long, so I'm gonna stop here. Death metal is truly one of the most fascinating genres I know, with the amount of experimenting and styles that have been created being a testament to both innovative nature of the style and the welcoming, receptive community behind it. You might not get used to the vocals immediately, but if you spend your time with it, you can start to appreciate the genre. And when you start delving into subgenres, you're bound to find something you can enjoy for a lifetime. So please, give this genre a try, and maybe enjoy some fucking death metal. Also subscribe to Crimgo and Robit Earl.